I'm Charles Sable, Curator of Decorative Arts at the Henry Ford, and this is the rocking chair that Abraham Lincoln was sitting in on the night he was assassinated. We get a lot of questions about the Lincoln chair, and one of the most interesting is, who was the original manufacturer of the chair? The rocking chair was part of a larger parlor set purchased at retail by Harry Ford, manager of Ford's Theater, when the theater opened to the public in 1863. The parlor set was used in a lounge area of the theater. Another question we get is, how do you know how many of that style of chair were made and how many may still be around? The rocking chair is known, not ironically, as a Lincoln rocker. Thousands of these were mass-produced beginning in the 1850s into the 1870s. The museum owns several more of these rockers that were used by the Lincoln family at their own home in Springfield, Illinois. Many of this type of rocker are still floating around. Another common question we get was it in police evidence storage for a while? And the answer is, following the assassination, the chair was seized as evidence by the federal government and remained in Secretary of War Edwin Stanton's office for at least 2 years. Our best period photographs of the chair come from its time in Stanton's office. In 1867, it was transferred to the Department of Interior, where it remained in storage. It was cataloged into the Smithsonian Institution's collection in 1902, and we'll talk more about its later history in another question. Now, another question that local people ask is, why was it moved from the Lincoln Logan County Courthouse? The chair was always intended by Mr. Ford to be displayed in the Logan County Courthouse in Greenfield Village, where Lincoln practiced law as a circuit rider in the 1840s. It was moved into the museum in 1979 as part of the 50th anniversary celebration of the Henry Ford. It is now an integral part of our With Liberty and Justice for All exhibit in Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation. Another question we get is, when was it first preserved in the glass case? Photographic evidence tells us that it was always preserved in a glass case in the Logan County Courthouse, from its arrival in 1930 to its move to the museum 50 years later. Another question that we get very commonly is, how did the museum acquire it? The museum acquired the chair through an auction in 1929. Blanche Chapman Ford, the widow of Ford's theater manager Harry Ford, no relation to Henry Ford, appealed to the federal government to return her husband's property, seized at the end of the Civil War. She used a precedent set in 1913 when the heirs of Jefferson Davis sued the federal government for return of his property. Once Blanche Ford took possession of the chair in 1929, she put it up for auction. It was purchased by the famed antique dealer Israel Sack, who immediately offered it to Mr. Ford, who in turn installed it in the Logan County Courthouse. He even filmed the move, unpacking, and the installation. Another question we get is, I've always wondered why it was a rocking chair in the theater. I've never seen a rocking chair as seating in a theater. Was it common at the time, or was it a request by President Lincoln for a specific theater seating? What we know from various sources was that the chair was usually placed in a lounge in Ford's theater and was offered to President Lincoln when he first started visiting the theater in 1863. He found the rocker very comfortable, and whenever he attended a play, it was specially brought out for him. Another question we get is, has the chair ever returned to Ford's theater for special occasions? The chair is a permanent part of the Henry Ford collection and is on display as an integral part of our With Liberty and Justice for All exhibition, which examines the history of American democracy.
Hello, my name is Mary Fahey. I'm the Chief Conservator at the Henry Ford. One of the questions that I often get about the Lincoln rocker is, what do we do to preserve the rocker and its fragile upholstery? In 1999, the upholstery on the chair was cleaned to remove dust and surface dirt. The springs in the seat cushion were secured from below to reduce stress on the fragile upholstery, and the upholstery was covered with a custom-dyed sheer fabric to hold the fragile upholstery fibers in place. The sheer fabric also provides some protection from light exposure. After the conservation work on the chair was completed, the chair was placed on display in a custom-built exhibit case. The case is equipped with low light levels to protect the upholstery from fading, in addition to humidity control to prevent the chair from exposure to either fluctuating or high humidity levels, because these factors can lead to damage of both the wood and the fabric. One of the most common questions that we receive about the chair is the large stain on the back of the chair Abraham Lincoln's blood? The answer is no. Before the chair was conserved in 1999, small samples were sent out for analysis. Most of the stains on the headrest were determined to be hair oil. Another question that we received is there actual blood anywhere on the chair? The answer is yes. As mentioned previously, samples were analyzed prior to the 1999 conservation work. Preliminary presumptive tests for blood using the chemical benzidine gave positive results for 2 locations on the chair. One is on the back of the chair, and the other one is on the front edge of the seat. More conclusive testing, such as DNA testing, would have required us to have a second known sample of DNA from the president or from one of his descendants. So that sort of analysis was never carried out. Another question that we received is, why is the chair in this condition, and why wasn't it reupholstered? The fabric on the chair is the same fabric that was on the chair the evening of President Lincoln's assassination. As a museum, it's our responsibility to preserve as much original material as possible. This includes fragile fibers and the stain. This is particularly important if an artifact is linked to a significant historical event, such as the assassination of President Lincoln.